taxes was taxing. Now taxes is relaxing when you file for free.
I can file for free? TurboTax Free Edition. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free. I can file for free.
Now this is taxes. File for free with TurboTax Free Edition and get your maximum refund. No schedules except for Earned Income Tax Credit, Child Tax Credit, and Student Loan Interest. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
It's just a great conference that is at a point right now where they're, I think, clearly the best Group of Five conference in the country.
The state of Sunbelt football is the strongest in our history.
And we got to continue to showcase what our league is about.
This league is insane.
Yeah, it might be like one of those 8 wonders of the world.
And you can see just what a great Group of Five conference it really is.
It's a big deal.
Boy, life is looking pretty good in the Sun Belt these days.
Everybody, welcome back to the FunBelt Podcast. My name's Jeremy Harper from HowlRaiser.com. His name is Dusty Thibodeau from the Warhawk Report. Missing in action for just a moment is Shane Metlin from, what's that newspaper?
Daily News Record.
The Daily News Record. One day I'll remember that. Shane's not here right now, but he'll join us a little later. What a messed up week in the Sun Belt that we have to recap, Thibodeau. I mean, it was just a topsy-turvy, upside down. You could not predict the outcome type of week. We saw the top 25 curse raise its head once again. We saw another undefeated team go down. We saw teams that shouldn't win. What the hell happened in the Sun Belt, Dusty?
It was a wild ride. And I think that we actually saw that maybe the Sun Belt West is the better division than the Sun Belt East.
You know what? I even threw that idea up in the sky because, quite frankly, we've seen some pretty good upsets and near upsets of Sun Belt East teams by the Sun Belt West, including Texas State over Appalachian State, including the Cajuns over Marshall. We had Troy needed the Appalachian State needed a Hail Mary to beat Troy. South Alabama looking super stout. Those guys, they seem to find ways to get the job done. I'm beginning to think the two best teams in the Sun Belt right now might be Troy and South Bama.
I agree, and they are on a Thursday night collision course this week. I think that is your semifinal for the Sun Belt Conference Championship. The winner of that will lead the West, and then they got to be ready to go and hopefully ready to host.
Yeah, well, if it's not the sort of de facto championship game, it definitely is the Sun Belt game of the week, because that is just going to be a great game on a Thursday night. I wrote in one of my articles that it used to be just kind of an amusing rivalry that would happen sometime during the season, the Battle of the Belt. Now it has real ramifications. I mean, true ironclad ramifications for the Sun Belt. If you're not watching that game on Thursday night, then you're not citizen of the Sun Belt. You might as well put in your papers and move to some other conference.
And you also get a little preview, a little appetizer on Wednesday night. Georgia State traveling to Boone.
That is a sneaky rivalry, because if there's one school that Appalachian State seems to have complete disdain for, it's Georgia State. So, and that's going to be a good game in a way that Appalachian State is just completely, I don't know. I don't want to say demoralized. Sean Clark doesn't seem like a guy who gets demoralized. Do you think he gets demoralized?
I think he's feeling a little bit of pressure that, he has this golden team and they have definitely not lived up to the hype and the expectations for this year. Yeah.
You got Chase Bryce, who sort of implied he came back to win a championship, and now that seems to be, in a state of flux. But we shouldn't be going ahead of second and short, Thibodeau. We need to be talking about what happened this last week. And one of the things that happened last week was ULM versus Troy, which I thought, no, I'm sorry, ULM versus, who'd you guys play?
South Alabama.
Yes, sorry. God.
I thought you were just trolling the Troy South Alabama, because I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter or not, but I mean, there's a lot of hate this week. If you got hate in your heart, let it out, and it is all out on Twitter for South hate and Troy hate week.
It's been like that for a while, but that ULM game versus South Alabama was quite a game. It told me, here's what it told me about ULM. ULM might be the most dangerous, not very good team in the Sun Belt. I mean, nobody expects ULM to come out and win the West, but ULM is one of those teams that's going to play hard every time, because I think it has that coach that the team really believes in. Tell me if I'm wrong. But Bowden is somebody that the players believe in. Am I right?
Without a doubt. I think until they can fix a couple of roster issues, and it's just going to take another recruiting cycle and maybe some portal guys. But when you only have 67 yards rushing and you're pretty much one-dimensional of pass, you're not going to win those close games.
No, the defense isn't quite there for ULM for that. But they will be a team that just doesn't quit. And they are a team that I think is sort of in the near future of the Sun Belt. I think we're going to see a ULM in the next couple of years that really starts the challenge for that Western title. One team that I don't know is ready to yet challenge for the Western title are the Cajuns, who beat Marshall. Did you see any of that game, Tibbs?
I did, and the lightning delay.
That's right. It was delayed. I'm seeing a team that still does. Guess who's the worst rushing team in the Sun Belt?
I'm gonna guess the Cajuns, just because you're leading into it.
It's the Cajuns. Would you have believed that coming into the season, the Cajuns, with its recent and rather mid-level history of running the ball, a team that is known for running the ball, just can't seem to get together. Now, Chris Smith was out last week against Marshall, has a hamstring injury, maybe out against the Red Wolves this season. That's a factor. But even Chris Smith hasn't really done a whole lot. So you just got to be wondering what is going on in Lafayette right now, that the signature things that used to define the Cajuns just aren't there, except for maybe a really good pass rush, which they still continue to have.
It's all about that offensive line. You look at the guys that transferred out to Florida following Napier there.
Yeah.
Max Johnson that declared early for the draft, now starting for the Jets. I mean, they lost a lot on that offensive line as well. We look at the key positions, but the guys in the trenches are just as important. And without those guys, it doesn't matter how good your running back is, how good your quarterback is. You're not going to have the time or the holes to move the ball down the field.
Yeah, I think at least one of those guys you mentioned was a 4-star guy. So you just don't lose that type of talent and think that you're just going to keep on competing. I think a lot of people in the media thought that's what was going to happen, that the Cajuns were the champs and they're going to continue playing championship football. But I think a lot of us in the know knew that there was just too much. But Mike, another question to you concerning that game is Marshall officially cooked? Even if they get Ali back.
Well, and there was some news that came out about Ali that maybe it was a actual medical issue and not a personal issue as to why he's missed a lot of the season, with no real time frame of when he could be coming back. I think Kalan Laburn has definitely filled the shoes, 120 yards this past week against the Cajuns. So I think the running game's there. But then you got to look also, Henry Colombi went down in that game against the Cajuns. How is he going to rebound moving forward this season? So there's a lot more questions about this Herd team than we really have answers for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think coming into the season, I thought the Herd were kind of a question mark. I knew they played great football in the recent past. They play incredible games against Appalachian State. That's what I knew them from. But there was some issues as to, did they have enough guys coming back? And I think after that Notre Dame game, I think we saw all the gas being used for the Thunder and Herd, which is too bad, because I really was hoping that this upcoming Herd versus JMU game was going to be this great game, but it doesn't look like it's going to be. It looks like it's going to be a get well game for James Madison. And speaking of Jimmy Mads, I believe I listen. I don't toot my own horn often about predictions because all my predictions usually come out wrong. But I had the sense, and you said Shane too had the sense, that if you can pass on James Madison, if you can find a way to defend the quarterback long enough for your quarterback to throw, then you have a good shot at beating James Madison. And when the hottest throwing team in the Sun Belt, the Georgia Southern Eagles, oh my God, how is that possible? When you come into Jonesboro and have to face that, well, James Madison found out they have a chink in their armor. What do you think, Tibbs? What's your analysis?
Kyle Ventries is legit.
Yeah.
And his stat line from this past week in that game against James Madison, 38 completions, 64 attempts, 578 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Amazing. And those are not numbers that I would have ever thought I would see out of Georgia Southern. Maybe against them, but not for them. 3 receivers over 100 yards with Amir Jones going for 164 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't know. I even watching that game, I didn't know how to react to that, seeing the Eagles just going vertical. And then also, did you not see in the pregame, they have one of the cool traditions where they have the eagle that flies around the stadium to hype up the crowd? Yeah. Dude left. He was gone.
I saw that on the social, that he had taken off out of the stadium and that there were people in the parking lot trying to get him back. Did he ever come back?
I never heard an update. I just know that when I was writing up our votes for the FunBelt 5, trying to shorten it up, I made a good old Yoda reference there of should lose Eagle more often. And I appreciate Georgia Southern fans for, catching that.
Well, I'm sure they took it with their usual grace and aplomb too, knowing Georgia Southern fans. But you know what, to me, what's incredible about that Georgia Southern turnaround is they took one off season to go from funky triple option, although they were telling you, oh, it's not a real triple option, whatever. It was a triple option. They went from funky triple option to full out air raid passing in one off season and did it successfully. I thought it would take them years, literally 3 or 4 years, to get the personnel to get that done right. Clay Helton did it in an off season, Tibbs. Yeah, how did he do it?
I agree. I would have thought just the offensive line alone of swapping that out from a straight run block to being able to pass block would have been at least a 2-year project, at least. Yeah. I don't know if it's portal guys, him just working some good old ditch water magic from Eagle Creek.
Could be beautiful Eagle Creek.
I don't know what it is, but he's got it going. And it might be a little premature to start saying this, but you got to wonder how long his stay is going to be in Statesboro if he can show that he has this kind of turnaround power for a program.
And isn't that why you go to Georgia Southern after you come from USC? Don't you just sort of step back and show, hey, listen, I still got the coaching cred. Look what I did to Georgia Southern. Would Georgia Southern even care if they were to lose Clay Helton? Of course, it always hurts when a coach leaves, but you can't expect him to stay forever, right? Especially if he's going to make this kind of magic turnaround. And quite frankly, Georgia Southern's in the race for the East. I mean, the way the East is right now, Georgia Southern could easily be the guys that come up on top.
Yeah, Georgia Southern's sitting at 1-2 in the conference, tied for 5th place in the East right now, but definitely not out of the running. Old Dominion sitting atop of the East there at 2-0, Coastal Carolina 3-1, Jimmy Mad at 3-1. Everyone else, it's a mesh.
Hey, I'm glad you mentioned Old Dominion because they put down a beat-ass whooping on Coastal Carolina, something that I know I didn't expect. Old Dominion came into that game averaging about 21 points per game, ended up with like 40 points, and that's crazy.
They literally ran all over the shots. Blake Wilson, 259 yards, 3 touchdowns, including a 67-yard. I don't know where that came from. I mean, I know that they did not have Zach Kuntz, the tight end. Ali Jennings was kind of held in check. He did have 6 receptions and 1 touchdown, but was largely held in check. It was literally a Blake Watson show as the Monarchs went into Coastal Carolina and came out with that huge win.
So another game that, if you weren't emotionally vested in it, Tibbs, was a pretty exciting game. And that was Southern Miss versus Arkansas State, which for the first 3 quarters, Arkansas State had handedly. There's something about Southern Miss. They just seem like a team that really have no offensive identity. They were scrolling through quarterbacks. They couldn't find leadership. Only Frank Gore and one of their receivers, Brownlee, who's actually a really good receiver, were the only 2 really offensive playmakers. Gore kept getting hurt. So it looked like Arkansas State was going to cruise. And then the 4th quarter happened. Red Wolves up by 12, surrender the lead, and then surrender the game. It was just an incredible blow up. And it's become a theme in Jonesboro and Butch Jones, 4th quarter meltdowns. And after the game, Butch Jones was saying, yeah, well, the meltdown actually occurs a lot earlier. When you got in the 3rd quarter, Arkansas State didn't score. And or at least they had opportunities to score more. They didn't. I think they scored 7 points. But the point is that Arkansas State's just having trouble closing out games. And this is the 3rd time they've come into the 4th quarter with a lead, only to see that lead slip away. Meanwhile, Will Hall gets the big win at home. It's his first Sun Belt win. They were very excited, and they should have been. But it was tough to watch, Tibbs. I don't know if you saw any of it, but it was tough.
Remember when we were talking about the ULM game, and I said, if you don't run the ball, you're not going to win?
Yeah.
Arkansas State, 50 yards rushing, you're not going to win the game.
Hey, did you know that Arkansas State had -4 yards rushing at halftime?
and what was the final?
The final was 20-19. Yeah. So, yes, you've got to run the ball in this league. That's the key. And Arkansas State still has trouble doing that.
How did James Blackman look?
He looked good. Here's the thing. In fact, at one point, he was running through a string where he didn't have any consecutive incompletions. So for like almost the entire game, he never threw more than 1 incompletion in a row. Does that make sense? Like he never had 2 in a row. So he was making all these passes, and it was fine. It was great, but he was also having to run for his life a lot. The Southern Miss off a defensive line, which isn't a defensive line you call home about, looked like champions against Arkansas State. So there's still a lot of rebuild to be done in Jonesboro. Southern Miss, probably, quite frankly, it's their mirror teams. They're about in the same boat. They both need to find, get new recruiting, get new personnel in there, build up to what the new Sun Belt is. It was an interesting game if you weren't involved in it in any emotional way, but Arkansas State needs to find a way to get it done. I tell you who did get it done, though, was Troy versus Texas State. Tell me you didn't think Texas State was going to come away with that win.
There's another Bobcat moment. And I hate to say that, knowing that our guest coming up is the Don Coryell of Texas State, athletic director there. I hate to say it, but it was a Bobcat moment. They had the game. They had the game.
And then what happened?
14-10 going into the 4th quarter, and just unable to stop the passing attack there of Doge for Troy.
Yeah. Doge maybe finally settling in. I know Gunnar Watson. What did Gunnar Watson not finish? He started the game, right?
He started the game and then had to leave.
Oh, so Gunnar's still a little hurt.
I don't think he's 100%.
All right. Okay. All right. I guess we'll see about that coming in the future. I know that Doge is somebody they're really high on. That's why they brought him in. So we'll see what that holds for Troy. I was impressed with Troy's defense, but more impressed that Texas State's defense is doing so well. Is Texas State defense a sneaky sort of unit that can actually shape the Sun Belt West in some way?
I think they're serviceable right now. I think they're still missing a couple players that could put them over the top. You know, They did have 3 sacks of Troy this past week, and the offensive line for Texas State did not surrender a sack, I should say. Saying they're sneaky good is probably a good analogy of saying that of that Texas State. Not a team that I would necessarily say that they have great defense. I always think of them more as an offense, and they just really outscore their opponents. But, you know, able to have a serviceable defense to keep teams in check.
Well, that's absolutely what they're going to need to compete. But we know what? I bet we can learn more in just a few seconds.
So, Jeremy, a little over a year ago, there was a big change in San Marcos.
Yeah.
Everyone was nervous. They didn't know what was going to happen when the Don was taking over your beloved Bobcats.
And you know what? It kind of needed a takeover, right? Bobcats needed some fresh leadership, some fresh perspective. They got their guy, and so far, it seems like it's working.
I mean, they're dominating across the board. I think everywhere but football, they've had at least part of a trophy in their case, or at least atop the standings.
Yeah, no kidding. We've seen Bobcats excel in baseball. We've seen Bobcats excel in basketball. We've seen them right now leading the standings in women's soccer.
And volleyball.
And really the last piece of that puzzle has been football. But this season we've seen a bit of a shift. You think we could talk to him about it?
I think we should talk to Coach Spav's boss, and that is the Don Coryell, joins us on FunBelt Podcast. Welcome in there, Don.
Appreciate you guys having me. I love the Don. I like it, dude. So that's Brent Freeman's fault. That's where you got this nickname from, huh?
I don't want to throw him under the bus, but yeah.
Okay, well, good. Because I just did, and I'm going to see him here. He's got a radio show that starts in about 30 minutes. I'm about to hook up with him, so he and I might have a little chat. But I like the Don. I'm game for it.
Oh, don't mention us. Oh my God, we owe him money.
First of all, I got to ask you, this year's been exciting for Bobcats. You've had a brand new president, Kelly Damphouse, come in riding the Harley. You've had Boko riding the Harley. When's your week?
I think my week is probably coming up here pretty soon. I got that question today because I'll tell you, I've had a pretty fun afternoon. Spent some time out at the football stadium today meeting our next rider. And so then we started, we're trying to do like kind of surprise celebrity type riders. And we met our rider for this weekend about an hour ago. And I'm trying to figure out our last 2 games. And I think I've got a really good one for our November 19th game. But that last game is in question. So it might be me. We'll find out. Wait and see, I guess.
Just know that I did talk to President Damphouse after his ride, and he said he was comfortable on the bike, but he was always fearful of that viral moment of just in case.
Well, hey, we almost had it last game. Ty Harrington, our baseball coach, who's awesome, our former baseball coach, came out and rode. Crowd loved it, and he's almost at the finish line. And our cheerleader, who runs our big flag, cut in front of him at the very last moment. And there was a split second where Ty was riding, basically draped in our flag. So we all collectively held our breath, but he made it out of there like a professional that he is, and everything went smooth. But no, we're keenly aware of the viral moment. Hopefully we don't have one.
It hasn't been a viral moment, though, the past year that you've been leading the Bobcats. You were the number 2 guy under the previous administration. Now, obviously, the top guy. What's been the big learning curve, or the big thing that you've had to really kind of maybe you weren't expecting in year 1?
Oh man, I'd say probably for me, maybe get pulled away. Time management with stuff that I maybe wasn't quite as involved with the first time around. A lot of Sunbelt meetings. That in my previous position I wasn't a part of. A little bit more travel. A lot of time, I sit on our president's cabinet here. And so a lot of time, spent with president's cabinet. So for me, probably just the time management of it, because I do try to go to, from an athletic standpoint, almost everything we have, right? I want to be visible. I want to be out there. I want to support. And so So some of that time management was probably the biggest challenge for me.
Do you feel the pressure knowing that, the Bobcats have been so solid across the board, really in every sport?
Yeah.
That you don't want to be the guy that kind of takes it all down. You're like, you want to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd say I feel pressure, but I realize what the expectations are here, right? We've got to continue to improve in those sports that are doing really well right now. And you touched on football. We're starting to show some glimpses here, right? And I think, that if there's pressure, in my opinion, it's, hey, what are we doing to make sure, we're putting our football coach and our student athletes in our program in that best possible position to succeed. So for me, it's not really pressure. It's more about just kind of understanding what those expectations are, knowing that we want to continue to win the Boovis Cup each year, knowing that we want to win it with a really strong football program is also really important to me.
So Dan, the latest round of FunBelt expansion brought forth sort of a new theme for the FunBelt, and that theme was rivalry. And with the new ones coming in, Southern Miss, Marshall, James Madison, Old Dominion, everybody seemed to have a little bit of built-in rivalry with it. But two programs that were kind of left out of that was Arkansas State and Texas State. Is it time, Dan, to have this heated, hated, burning hot rivalry between Texas State and Arkansas State?
I mean, I'll go with heated and burning hot. I don't know about hated, but I'll go with heated and burning hot. I kind of laugh. Kelly's obviously our president here, and Lane's our quarterback, and Lincoln Perry's our running back, and so we've got some strong Arkansas State ties within our program now. But yeah, we don't really have that natural rivalry. It'd be nice to form it with somebody in the league. And Arkansas State's a great opportunity for that. They're really good in everything as well. And so if we want to try to stoke that fire a little bit, I'm all for it. And we don't mind having those same conversations with ULM and in Louisiana as well, Dusty.
All right. Dan, I have a proposal, and it's a little bit out of the box. And it's okay if you say no. But how about when Texas State and Arkansas State meet up? I think we're meeting up in San Marcos. How about we stage a fist fight between you and me? No real blows landed, just stuntman work. Like we just throw some punches, we roll out the window, but we really make this seem like there's this big battle between us. What do you think? Can we do that?
I would probably embarrass myself, but I'm game for embarrassing myself. It's gonna maybe help draw a crowd. So yeah, let's do it.
Listen, I'll go ahead. I'll take some cash out of the petty cash. We'll hire a stunt coordinator, and we'll make it look really good.
Let's do it. Or maybe Arkansas State brings their mascot. We have the mascot do this. Our mascot's pretty good at that stuff. He had some fun at JMU, which I think was all over the internet. So yeah, we'll figure something out. We'll do something. If you just want entertaining, I can handle entertaining. We'll come up with something.
Quite frankly, it'd probably be better to have the mascots be our proxies for this, because I don't know about you, Dan, I'm getting a little too old for fisticuffs.
I'm much too old for almost anything.
I just like that he's trying to stoke the rivalry even more by calling him Dan instead of Don.
Well,
oh my God!
I was going to say that I'm now the Dan. I just, this is my first time on the show. I didn't want to seem rude. I'll go with Dan or the Don. I will answer questions to any name you call me.
Well, this might be the reason why we have to fight. I just keep forgetting the name.
That's it right there, huh? You've embarrassed me in front of the family.
So, Don, getting back the task at hand here, definitely one of the big areas, or one of the two big sports that Texas State's really been dominant in, men's basketball.
Yeah, been great.
What's that relationship been like with TJ as he has really built that program into a machine?
It's been fun to watch him develop as a head coach, as a person, as a leader. He's outstanding. He's so thoughtful and deliberate in everything he does. It's kind of fun to watch him in action. But he's done a fabulous job for us. Obviously, two conference championships in a row. Not that preseason polls mean anything, but we were just picked high in our preseason poll, which is nice to be recognized. He's done a great job of kind of continuing what I consider to be really kind of like a defensive minded culture with our team approach while sprinkling in, some different types of offense. But he's been outstanding, and I think we got the players again to make another run.
And you're an old basketball guy. I mean, you were a Cardinal there at Lamar.
Yeah.
Do you still say, hey, TJ, I got a little left in me. I can get out there?
Man, I would love to try to get out there and play a little bit. I before I had this job, I was playing pretty consistently a couple times a week, but I haven't played in probably 2 years. And you could probably see that if you see me in person. I got a nice little chin brewing here, a little double chin. I got a nice little gut that's starting to show. So I got to figure out something to do. But TJ's doing just fine with the guys he has right now. I don't think he needs an old man's help. But being an old basketball guy, I will say this: it's a lot of fun to be a part of a program like TJ's and our men's basketball team. When you're winning like that, they've had so much success, and to be a small part of that. It's a privilege for me, and I really enjoy it.
And then, of course, the other sport, baseball.
Yeah.
What's it going to take for the Bobcats to actually get to host a regional, and then if not, host a super regional?
And we were pretty close, right? If we could have hung on at Stanford, we would have had that regional here, that super regional the next week. And we were prepared for it, and we're going to bring in some additional stands, and we had some fun stuff that we were going to do. But I think he's put together another really good schedule. To make sure that we've got that high RPI, that high net ranking that we may need to be considered. So if we can take care of business, I'd like to think that we could be in that discussion again of maybe hosting. But last year was historical for us, right? And the farthest that we've advanced in a regional. And again, we lost some really key players, but we got a really, really solid group of players back. And similar to basketball, from what I'm seeing and from conversations with Coach Trout, who he and his staff were unbelievable. I think we're going to have another good shot at having a really good season. So I'd like to think that, we've started to get these things figured out, and that, we're not going to go too far backwards. Every now and then you got to reload. I think everybody understands that. But I think we've got some things in place that are going to help us consistently challenge for a lot of those championships.
So Dan, some bigger picture Sunbelt things. I know that as the athletic director, you're involved in some top secret meetings with Commissioner Gill trying to shape the new Sunbelt. Are we finished? Is 14 where we stand, or are we going to get bigger?
Well, I can't comment on that. That's top secret information that only
fair enough.
But I can tell you, like you all have been, and our fan base and all the other teams in the league, I don't think we could be more pleased or excited about those teams that we just recently added. That's been so cool to see, right? Great brands, great support, great tradition for those schools. It's going to be more of a challenge. I tell our coaches that, with these teams that have come in, we got to pick up our game, right? We got to step it up if we're going to continue to try to win this Movers Cup. But I love the teams that we added, and I think it's great for the league. It's great for the brand, and you've already seen the impact, in a lot of these sports already with these new teams.
Well, speaking of stepping up and improving the brand, I think the Sunbelt West was considered sort of the weak part of, at least in terms of football, the weak part of the conference. But we've seen some pretty big wins over the East, including Texas State over Appalachian State. Do you feel like maybe the Sunbelt West was undersold a little bit or underappreciated? I don't know if I'd say we're undersold or underappreciated. I would say in our case with Texas State, it's great to see us make that kind of progress, right? I mean, that was a really big win for us a couple weeks ago in front of a great crowd. I was so happy for our fans that got to experience that. We've had some really good crowds in the past and have sold out our stadium several times, but haven't been able to pull off a victory in those instances. So we had the 7th largest crowd
played a really good game. Coach Babcock called an awesome game. Our players were great. And so from our standpoint, if people overlook us, that's okay with us, right? We'll approach it a little bit differently. We don't mind approaching things as an underdog in football. We've been doing that for a while now, and hopefully we're going to, change that a little bit. But I like what we saw a couple of weeks ago. I thought we played really tough against Troy this past weekend. Disappointed we didn't get the win.
Yep.
But have a good opportunity this week against a really good Southern Miss team.
So Don, what's next for Texas State? I love going to San Marcos. I keep trying to get Jeremy to go there. He's got to be able to hit the strip.
I can't go to San Marcos. They're my enemy. They're my big. I wanted there.
You are big on this rivalry thing, aren't you? I like it.
I'm just trying to make it happen.
I'm going to change your mind about San Marcos. Instead of you and I fighting, what's going to happen is we'll have a tube race. All right, I'm going to throw you on an inner tube. We're going to get it. We're going to start here at Sewell Park, and we'll float down to Ivar's Pub, and the loser has to buy the first round. So that's what we'll do, Jeremy. When you're off the river, you're going to wish you went to school here, and you're going to love the Bobcats.
I am going to take that challenge. I love it. But you know what? We play in November, Don. I don't know if I want to.
The beautiful thing about San Marcos, it doesn't matter. I floated the river on New Year's Day here, a decade.
Oh.
So. Hey, November, you might get 80 degrees here. You're fine.
Okay. I'll prepare myself then.
Perfect. To answer your question, we're working on kind of all aspects of stuff. One of our big priorities, obviously, continue to support our football program and try to put a lot of resources and effort into that to continue to improve. Working on some facility stuff, specifically football right now, with the big expansion of our South End Zone complex, which we're calling our Football Performance Center. It's going to have a new weight room, new athletic training room, new coaches' offices, some new hospitality things. So right now, a lot of focus on football in the big picture, and then obviously, we're starting basketball right now, right? And we're constantly working on engagement, right? Trying to get more people to our athletic events. That's one of the bigger challenges here is making sure that we're putting a great product out there. And then having the fans that get behind it, right, and support it. So we're always working on engagement, trying to get more people involved.
Don, we thank you so much for joining us, and always look forward to trips to San Marcos. I'm jealous. I want to float the river and have some Bobcat brew at the end of it.
Hey, just let me know, fellas. Next time you guys are here, look me up.
Absolutely, and we'll get this heated rivalry started off right with beer.
We'll see what we can do. I like it.
So, Jeremy, we talked about last week's games.
Yeah.
And we sung the praises there of Kyle Ventries with his big game. But if you look at the stats, or if I asked you, who's leading the Sun Belt in passing, team-wise, who would you say?
Oh, probably somebody like Coastal, maybe, or let's see.
Not in the top five.
Yeah, who else is maybe a good passing team? Troy has been a good passing team. I would say maybe Troy.
Number two.
I know in the past Arkansas State has, but maybe not this year. The one team that I wouldn't think would be leading and passing would probably be Georgia Southern, because all they do is run.
That is correct. However, 2022 has seen the quarterback at Georgia Southern do this thing where he takes the ball overhand and it flies through the air with the greatest of ease.
An unfamiliar sight in Statesboro. Oh my God, Kyle Ventries.
And the man that has the front row seat for it all, Danny Reed, the voice of the Eagles, joins us now. Welcome in there, Danny.
Guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on.
So the first question I have about the game, it really has nothing to do with the game. What's the status of the Eagle? Because I know pregame, he got too hyped that he was like, deuces, I'm out of here.
Well, he decided to take a right turn from the top of the press box. He actually landed on the street that separates the stadium from a local gas station, and they had to send a police officer over to shut down traffic on the street so they could go get him bring him back in the stadium. Now, once they got him back in the stadium, I mean, he had his meal, he was fine, and he got the chance to see a great game and all that. But that's about the third or fourth time in the last couple of years where he has just decided to go off course. And since Jeremy's here, this is funny because last year when Arkansas State was in, it was one of the longer flights he's ever had. He went all the way around the Bishop Fieldhouse, which is down towards the west end zone, and he made a full revolution around it. And we honestly thought that he had crashed into the building, but then he ends up just appearing out of nowhere. I mean, the fans sitting on the other side could see him the whole time. He ends up coming back in, splitting the two flagpoles, and landing right on Steve Hines' arm. Steve is the curator of the Wildlife Center on campus, and it was a pretty cool moment. But yeah, he landed in the road on Saturday, and I guess it was a good omen because I think that's the second time that Georgia Southern's won when he hasn't gone from where he starts to where he's supposed to end. But it all worked out.
Well, let me ask you this. What happens? Is there like a contingency plan, you think? If the Eagles should just take off, you never see them again? Is it like one of those things where the PR people get involved and like maybe a stunt eagle or a backup eagle is brought in? What happens if that God forbid you lose the eagle?
There have been a couple of times. Once he ended up in the tailgate lots. There was another time, 22, when I was the announcer for the Citadel back in 2011. It was so windy that day that they wouldn't fly him, and apparently that's one of the few times that they haven't been able to fly him outside of some rain or wind or whatever since they actually started flying him when the stadium got built. But our live mascot Gus kind of takes a cue whenever he's up there figuring out how much airtime he wants, how many fans he wants to greet. He actually got so low on Saturday that the upper part of the stadium, it felt like he was going to land there or give somebody a high five on the way by because he did a couple of go-bys, and then he ended up going out and landed on the street. But Gus, once he realized, our live mascot on the field in the suit and whatever, he just started sticking his arms out and flying himself and acting like he was landing, and the fans got a kick out of that. And the band plays Final Countdown because apparently Freedom needs that song to get his juices going, proverbially, I guess is how you would put it. And once it gets to a certain part, that's when he takes off for the field. But whenever he decided to make the right turn, Gus just took it from there, and he kind of did the little airplane deal and stopped, and everybody got a big kick out of it.
Nice.
So then the game happened.
Yeah, that was like,
and Kyle Ventry just went off. What was it? 578, new school record. What's going on down in Statesboro that they're actually airing it out?
Guys, we've gone from a place where the quote is, there's only 3 things you can happen when you pass, and 2 of them ain't good, to being number 2 in the country in passing. He only trails Michael Penix right now, the transfer from Indiana to Washington. And to get used to an offense that has gone from 85% run to about 65% pass, they're running almost 80 plays a game, where typically they're anywhere from 60 to 65 plays. It's definitely been a shift, and it's been a lot for people to get used to. But what it all boils down to is if you got more than the other team at the end of the game, it really doesn't matter what it looks like. And thankfully, Georgia Southern had that one more possession in the fourth quarter. Derwin Burgess made another highlight reel catch. He's done it all year long, and thankfully they got the stop at the end. But one of the most fun nights I can ever recall at Paulson Stadium. It was really special.
So why was it that you were able to figure out James Madison, which to me is one of the more complete teams in the Sun Belt? They play defense well, they play offense well, they do everything very well. And then what happened with Georgia State, which is a bit of a rivalry, and you just never seem to really get going against Georgia State. What happened there?
What happened against Georgia State is that the Eagles turned it over 5 times and gave up 5 yards rushing and still only lost by 8. So you take one of those away, or even just a few of the rushing yards, they took themselves out of 5 different possessions, and it would have been a much different game. They did that to James Madison, and Kurt Signetti talked about this, I think, on the press conference on Monday. If you go on the road and you get a block punt for a touchdown and you turn it over 4 times, you're probably not winning, regardless of what your record is and what you're ranked. And yes, they were down by 7 points with the football in the final minute, but he got pressured. Todd Centeio got pressured. By the way, Todd Centeio might be player of the year this year. He is absolutely outstanding. But thankfully, he went right to Anthony Wilson, took a couple of steps, slid down. And then one of the few times all year that Georgia Southern's been under center was the victory formation, and the celebration happened not too long after that.
You mentioned James Madison, and automatically Shane Metlin appears for us. So welcome in there, Shane.
Hello.
So I think one of the biggest mysteries that we had coming into it was, how was Clay Helton going to do this year at Georgia Southern, kind of as an outsider coming in with all the tradition, but really, yes, it's year one, but it's kind of year 1.5 that he had last year. How big was that last year where he kind of got to go through the motions and go through, a season without really being the head coach to kind of step back and evaluate? How did that help this season?
He's talked about that all the time, and how proactive Jared Benko, Chris Davis, and the hiring committee were in getting him hired with 4 weeks left in the season. Now, granted, the first game that he saw in person was a deluge of rain against Coastal Carolina, where Georgia Southern got behind 28-0. But to have him on campus for an entire month to just evaluate, survey, make notes, figure out what he wanted to do, what he needed to change, what kind of scheme he was going to be able to make work, how he was going to make it all fit within the framework of Georgia Southern's culture. And I think what helped him is coming from USC, one of the most recognizable brands in all of college athletics, and having G5 experience at Memphis and Houston, two places that are known for success and passion as well. And he's also from this part of the country. He's from Gainesville, Florida, which is basically 3 hours south of here. His dad coached at Florida. They're really good family friends with Steve Spurrier. Kim Helton's been a longtime coach in the NFL and Canada. He's been doing it for 5 decades. But he needed that time to maybe figure out how the wheel was going to keep rolling, how he was going to keep the spokes on the wheel, and how this transition was going to take place, because he has been pretty insistent that, look, everybody wants to focus on how different the offense is. And when you go from whatever option scheme Georgia Southern was running to this, but it's also the defense going from a 3-4 to a 4-2-5. There's been a lot of dime usage over the first 7 games, and on special teams, Georgia Southern struggled mightily on special last year. And now this year, with a dedicated coach in Turner West who has NFL experience, with a dedicated kickoff guy in Michael Lance, who has been outstanding for Minnesota. Alex Rayner's 12 out of 13 on field goals. Amari Jones has a 50-yard punt return. Georgia Southern consistently wins the battle of field position. And, oh, by the way, they just blocked their first punt of the season for a touchdown last weekend against a top 25 team, which ultimately helped save the game. It took a while for people to realize why change was necessary, but they went about it the right way. The phrase that's been used here a lot, and it's mostly been in regards to trying to raise money. The word modernization has been used, and people have tethered that to the football program, because you got the indoor practice facility that's getting constructed, but we're also breaking ground on a brand new convocation center. Baseball and softball have projects that are ongoing, and there's going to be more facilities projects that get announced in the near future. But the idea of modernization is to get Georgia Southern up to speed, to keep up with not just the rest of the FBS, but the rest of the Sun Belt Conference, because what Louisiana has done, what Coastal has done, what App has done, Troy opening up the facility in the last couple of years, Arkansas State has some of the best facilities anywhere. I'd put them in the top 10% of teams all across the country. If you don't invest financially and you don't make that kind of commitment, you're going to get left behind, and the results on the field will not be the results that you want. To put it that way, with the combined effort of Jared, Chris Davis, the deputy AD, the hiring committee, and Coach Helton's experience, having spent the last dozen years at USC, they understand what it takes to not only build a program, but do it the right way. And if it had to be to run an offense where you're throwing it a lot more than what you're used to, if you've got a 4-down look instead of a 3-down look, and for special teams, when you're trying to limit field position and you're not trying to lose games, you're trying to win games that way, which Georgia Southern just did last weekend. It is definitely taking some people a while. And when you lose, it's not the way it was before. It's not what we're used to. This is besmirching their tradition, or whatever you want to say. But I think in a better way, Clay Helton has helped add to this tradition, because he truly wants to be here. He's got a love for Georgia Southern, of someone that's been here for 10 years. He's so genuine in his interactions. There is a really special feeling between that staff and those players. They really want this because they know the place demands it. To them, whatever they've got to do to win, they trust the plan, they trust each other. And last weekend is just verification and validation about everything that they've done really from last November when he got here up until this point. And hopefully it just continues, because I think that if they can continue that and continue to grow and find other ways to have success, they can take the rest of the season and go wherever they want to, just by nature of how they do it.
Yeah, that's a good segue into my next question. The expectations for Georgia Southern were kind of tempered coming in to the opening. Now we're at midweek. Georgia Southern has some pretty good wins, a lot of moxie going into the next few games. What are the expectations from the fans for this season? Not necessarily for seasons up to come, but for this season right now.
Well, it honestly depends on who you talk to, because there are some still believe it's 13-0 national championships, which with this we know it's going to happen, but it's not out of the question to reasonably think that Georgia Southern should win the East every year. And I know how tough that it is with what App has done, what Coastal has done, what it looks like JMU is going to do. Georgia State continues to improve. And of course, with Marshall, if they can get some things figured out, they've got just as much talent as anybody else in the league. But for the rest of this season, you're 4-3. You're 2 wins away from being bowl eligible. The league has not yet announced its 6th bowl tie-in, but I'm thinking that that's going to be coming soon. And the part of this that gets a little bit interesting, one, I know the league has 5, could be as many as 6 bowl tie-ins, but if enough teams in this league show strength, then they could find themselves in other bowl positions. They could be selected for bowls that are outside potentially of what the ESPN events deal is and the 5 that we're dedicated to. So that's something to consider. If one of the other G5 leagues happens to slip, if Conference USA, which I believe has 7 bids already, if they would happen to slip a little bit, there's no reason to think that the FunBelt wouldn't be looked at as a viable option to fill some of those slots. Another thing is, if you're Appalachian State, and I know that they played on Wednesday night against Georgia State, they need to win 7 games to be bowl eligible, because they played 2 FCS games this year, and you can only count one of those. So if they finish 6-6 for whatever reason, I don't think that's going to happen. But if they would finish 6-6 for whatever reason, they're not eligible for a bowl game. So they would have to finish 7-5 to be eligible for one of those bowl slots. And if you're Georgia Southern, 6 should be enough to get you in, because the fan base is going to travel wherever it is. They would look at this celebration after going 3-9 last year. But simply by how this offense can get its yards and get its points, and how exciting these games seem to be every week, where it's been a 1-score game in the fourth quarter, 6 consecutive weeks. I mean, the Eagles, I could see them doing a lot of damage down the stretch. I could also see teams figuring some things out, and maybe Georgia Southern still has some things to learn. But I would hope that a reasonable expectation at this point, as we sit halfway through Old Dominion prep week, is to be bowl eligible. I don't think that that's out of the question whatsoever.
So going into this game against Old Dominion, that should be an interesting contrast. You've got Georgia Southern with that unexpectedly uncharacteristic awesome pass attack guided by Ventries. And then you have an Old Dominion team that statistically, if you look at total defense, they don't rank very high, but they're actually a very big takeaway team. A lot of bend, don't break. They give up a lot of yards, but they always give up a lot of touchdowns. How do you anticipate that game going?
Yeah, they're 5th in the country in red zone defense, to give you an idea. Yeah, you're going to be able to go up and down the field. Probably, I'm not going to say it's at will, but you will be able to get your yards. But for whatever reason, a lot like Georgia defense, once you get into the red zone, touchdowns are hard to come by, points are hard to come by. I would think this is going to be a pretty high scoring game, and that doesn't mean I lack faith in Georgia Southern's defense, but I do know what Old Dominion does well, and I think Old Dominion knows what Georgia Southern does well. They're last in the league in pass defense. But one thing that they'll try to counteract is the fact that they lead the country in sacks per game. They've got better than 4 sacks per game, and they just sacked Grayson McCall 7 times last weekend. That's an offensive line that doesn't give that up, and that's a quarterback that is known for being one of the shiftiest and sleekest in the league for avoiding situations like that. So I would guess that they're going to try to come after Kyle Van Treese with everything they got. But if you watch last week's film, when JMU tried to do it, Van Treese was able to find the gaps. He was able to use the talented receivers. He was able to throw to Jalen White out of the backfield 6 times. His touchdown was the go-ahead late in the third quarter with under 2 minutes to play. So I would think that Old Dominion with Blake Seiler, they're going to have to find some unique ways to bring zone pressures and force Van Treese to see things that maybe aren't there. And then offensively, Georgia Southern's going to have to run the ball a little bit. I don't know if they can win too many games with 12 yards rushing, but it's nice to know that you can still do that against a top 25 team. And with the benefit of having the home crowd behind you, be able to do something like that last weekend.
So enough with the gridiron. Basketball season is coming up as well. Georgia Southern picked in the lower half of the men's standings there, 11th overall. I'll tell you, last year watching Georgia Southern, they were a good team, but man, that was some ugly basketball to be played. What can we expect this upcoming year?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Brian Berg would rather win ugly than pretty. He said if he could win every game 49-45, he would absolutely love it. It's just he's bare knuckle. He's roll up the sleeves. He's get down and dirty. He loves to have teams that are predicated on defense, keep the ball on one side of the floor. Classic Chris Beard style of defense. What hurt Georgia Southern last year, they couldn't shoot. They hit only 30% of their threes, and since they've been tracking 3-point percentage, that was the worst 3-point shooting season in the history of Georgia Southern basketball. So they tried to address it in the transfer portal. They got Ty Strickland from Temple. They got Tyron Moore from an outstanding junior college program at Moberly out in the St. Louis area. And also Jalen Finch, grad transfer point guard from Jacksonville State, who played the NCAA tournament last year against Auburn and scored 17 points against the team that won the SEC championship. He'll be asked to run the point in a starting role, but all 3 of those guys can run the offense in their own way. And when you pair that with a Kamari Brown, a Cam Bryant, and Andre Saversov, who's got all league potential on the inside. And somebody I'm really excited to watch this year is Caden Archie, because he took a big old step forward final 3 weeks of last year. I think he discovered his jump shot, and he's always been somebody that's really good on the ball. Coach Berg has said that he could be the league's best defender if he can get himself in the right situation. I think this will be Berg's best offense. They'll be a team that can score 70 points per game just by how well they'll be able to shoot it from the outside. And if they can get enough stops, I think that they can also benefit from the most home games that they've had in about 30 years. Got 16 home games this year, getting the bounce back from a Campbell, a Wofford, a Florida Gulf Coast, a Morehead State. So this is a good situation to be in year 3, typically the year where you'd like to see the program get established and what kind of things you can really expect from a coach in year 3. And I think that this is going to be his best team.
You mentioned, bare knuckles, and you mentioned Ty Strickland. I know his brother Terrell plays at JMU, and they have actually come to blows at times when they played against each other. I've heard. So hopefully they'll avoid that when they.
That's the rumor, Shay. That's the rumor.
Yeah. Great family though. Both those guys. That'll be fun to watch them play against each other this year.
Well, I'm sure Mark Byington is very much looking forward to coming back to Hanner Fieldhouse this year, at a place where he won a lot of basketball games, about 20 wins a year over his 7 years. And people say, well, he's not going to be really used to that visiting locker room. Well, you might forget he was at the College of Charleston when them and Georgia Southern were in the Southern Conference. So he knows the visiting locker room just as well as he knows the home locker room. But we'll get to that once we get to the season.
Yeah.
So we've had Jared Vinko on. We've had Clay Hilton on the show. They all talked about taking the plunge in good old Eagle Creek. Danny, it's 6 years. Surely you've been baptized.
It's actually funny you bring that up, because I have not been in Eagle Creek.
Oh, no! Is that allowed?
Not for my lack of trying.
Yeah. The Peanut Gallery is confirming. Well, yes, I've not been in Eagle Creek. I didn't know if that was a thing that the radio guy had to do. My predecessor, I know that he didn't do it, and I'm not sure if the late Nate Hirsch ever did it. But that's a tradition that's kind of changed over the years. The Erks guys were doing it at the end of the season sometimes, and then for a while it was at the beginning of the season, towards the end of fall camp, and then it went back to the end of the season, then back to the beginning of the season. They did it this year towards the middle of fall camp in a special Sunday ceremony. But no, I have not taken that plunge at that part of Eagle Creek yet.
So, in other words, we're all eligible to be the voice of the Eagles then, since we haven't been baptized either, right?
Under that rationale, yes. If you could find somewhere to live in Statesboro and you're up for the challenge, you are more than welcome.
Well, Danny, I know we'll talk to you again soon because I know the Eagles are soaring high. Hopefully, they're not going to make the mysterious right turn, as you said, of the Eagle. And we'll be talking to you bowl game coming up here in a few weeks. Even it feels like.
If we can talk in a couple of weeks, if Georgia Southern's eligible for a bowl game, that would definitely be a successful year one under Clay Helton. And I think that would do a lot to improve some of the morale around the program. It's always difficult at a place that has won a lot when you have a losing season. It's only happened 6 times in 4 decades, but 3 of those have happened since 2016. It's just a matter of trying to get this program back to where many people feel that it should be, but also being reasonable enough to realize that this league is a monster now. People want to talk about the East Division all they want to, but the West has some really good football as well. And we're going to see that Thursday night with a game that may decide the West with Troy and South Alabama. That's probably the best battle for the belt that those two have ever had since South has figured some things out with Kane Womack. But every week is going to be just put the gloves on and go figure it out. Hopefully you're ahead by the time the game is over with. And I think it's only going to get more and more difficult as this league keeps getting better.
Well, that was a good interview with Danny from Georgia Southern. Seems really excited about where Georgia Southern is going. You have to agree
he's never baptized.
Is he really an agent for Georgia Southern, or is he a secret agent from somewhere else? I mean, quite frankly, it seems like anybody who is affiliated with the Eagles program would have to be baptized. Am I right? Shane, you know this part of the country better than we do. Is this a little sus, as the kids would say?
Yeah, maybe a bit. I have to say I haven't been to Statesboro. What I've seen of that creek, I can see maybe wanting to avoid it if I was in. But yeah, maybe it's just not an announcer thing. I don't know.
Maybe he doesn't want an infection. I get that. You're kind of avoiding that. But that was some interesting input too about what happens to the Eagle should it get lost. That was kind of a nice little bit of input too. So a lot of answers revealed by that interview. And once again, it was a FunBelt triumph. You know what else is a FunBelt podcast triumph?
Apparently loud music and a quiet Shane.
No, we're gonna fix that. No, it's a second and short. All right, you guys know the rules of second and short. We go through the rundown of the upcoming games, and we keep it to under 2 minutes. Are you guys with me on this?
Yes.
Yay.
Tibbs, you will be representing the West. Shane, you will be representing the East. So That's how I'm looking at that. So to start it off, Wednesday, by the way, guys, 2 midweek Sunbelt games. Haven't had that all year. So it's 2 blasts of Sunbelt heat. I don't know if the nation can absorb it. We're going to find out. But that first blast comes Wednesday night. That's tomorrow evening. Georgia State at Appalachian State, 6:30 p.m. on ESPN2. Just kind of a sneaky rivalry game. I know Appalachian State pretends they're not a rival of Georgia State. They really are. Shane, what do you see out of this game?
I'm just going to hit on that rivalry thing first.
Okay.
I think everybody in the East, maybe the whole conference, is a little bit of a rival of Georgia State right now because everybody wants to recruit in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be a little bit of that in the background of every game with Georgia State. That said, still haven't figured out Georgia State. Know what to expect from them 1 week after the other. As we just heard, maybe their win against Georgia Southern is more on Georgia Southern's turnovers than necessarily Georgia State putting it together. I still just do not know what to expect from them. Appalachian State's a little bit the same way, but we know Boone's a tough place to play in. I'm going to go with App State in this one.
Shane, first of all, that Georgia Southern's not going to give any credit to Georgia State's defense. So I don't know what we can take away from Danny's analysis on that. Do you think that maybe Appalachian State is a little shell-shocked right now? Is Chase Bryce and company, are they on the struggle bus, or will they have figured things out?
They are, but I mean, they've had, I guess, a little extra time to make this about themselves, figure themselves out with these midweek games. Maybe there's something they can do with that. It's been surprising what we've seen from Appalachian State so far, but you got to kind of think that the team that beat Texas A&M is still in there somewhere, and it's still going to show up again at some point this year.
The Tibbs, the Mountaineers are 10-point favorites going into this game. Does that sound right to you, or do you think that's maybe underselling the Mountaineers in Boone a little bit?
I don't know. I mean, if you would have said before the season that App State going into the second half of the season was going to be next to last in the East, I would have said you were crazy. If you would have told me that Georgia State was going to be in the middle of the pack of the Sun Belt East, I would have said you were probably okay. I'll accept that. But I don't know what to think of this App State team. They're hands down the most talented team in the league. They have the most star power. They have the most offensive power. They have one of the best defenses. They just don't know how to put it all together after that A&M win. Do they start this week? Maybe. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. And I really don't have a pick in this game because I could see App State finally putting it together and putting it on the Panthers. But then I could see the Panthers still just continuing to roll and winning their third straight game.
Yeah, I can kind of see a seething Mountaineers coming away and running away with this game. We'll see. Georgia State has a really good defense, and they might find a way to mitigate Chase Bryce and company. So the next night, that was like an appetizer, guys. The next night is the main course. Battle of the Belt, Troy at South Alabama, 6:30 p.m. on ESPNU. This was just sort of an amusing rivalry in years past. Now, the winner really shapes how the Sun Belt goes. I'm going to throw this over to you, Tibbs. What do you see coming out of this game?
A lot of defense, honestly.
Yeah.
And I know I caught flack on Twitter for not paying the respect there to Carter Bradley. He did set a school record last week, throwing for, I think, 400 yards maybe.
You did. Deservedly so.
It happens. This is really a great game. I give South a little bit of an edge because it's at home. I know that the wit is going to be rocking, but I'm telling you, it's going to be a fight to the end. I definitely think this is a one-possession game. Troy could go in there and get the win, and if so, as you said, whoever wins it is in the driver's seat of the Sun Belt West.
So the Jaguars come in. The Jags. Let's just go with that. Yeah. The Jags come in with the 28th ranked offense. Troy comes in with the 32nd ranked defense. That's going to be a really good battle. Vegas says gives the Jags a 3-point edge. Shane, what do you think of that?
I mean, that being the home bump sounds about right to me. I think, both of these teams have been impressive so far. I've liked what South Alabama's done all year, with the exception of faking a field goal at UCLA. I mean, I've liked everything else they've done this year. They should be undefeated. They should be ranked right now. I'm going to give them the edge at home, but I expect it to be a really fun, entertaining game on national TV.
That field goal is going to live on forever.
And it should. Yeah. Here's the thing, too. Both these teams, they're just sort of fluke accidents away from being ranked themselves. So just a great game for a Thursday night, great game for the Sun Belt. I personally can't wait to watch this game. I'm going to make my kids watch the game. They're going to hate me for it, but so be it. They're going to see some great football. Saturday, October 22nd, then we finally, kind of get the Saturday action going. And it starts off with another meeting against Army. Oh my God,
Yes,
Army.
Army's honorary Sunbelt this year, I believe.
They might as well join.
They've played as many Sunbelt games as a lot of teams in the conference.
And they still have one to go after this weekend.
They still have Troy to play. So ULM at Army, 11 a.m. on the CBS Sports Network. I'm throwing it over to you, Tibbs. I know you're a citizen of ULM, and I know that you believe in your heart that ULM is coming away with a victory.
I hope so. It's been 3 years since they've won on the road. This might be one of the best shots they have to get that road win, and I'm hoping for it. And I think it happens. I think the Warhawks have just enough. They learned their lesson last week to play all 4 quarters, play all the possessions, and they get the win over Army and snap that road losing streak.
You know, the Black Knights, they've already lost to Coastal. They've already lost to Georgia State. Now you get a ULM who doesn't have a bad rush defense. Shane, the Knights are picked at are 7-point favorites in this game. I feel like this is an upset of the week. What do you think?
I'm with you. I mean, I think, the third straight national televised game we talked about on CBS Sports Network, I think it's going to be a good one for the Sun Belt and for ULM. I think they're going to come away with this. I definitely think they're going to cover that 7 points. I think they win outright.
Yeah, you know what? That's going to be a great setting there at West Point, especially for you, Tibbs. I know that you're also a citizen of the military. That's going to be a really cool game to see you guys, your home team, fighting against the Black Knights at West Point, that small but loud stadium. That's going to be a cool game. That's going to be, in a lot of ways, just as cool as the Thursday night game with the Battle of the Belt.
Hopefully it's just better than that 2020 game that was a straight whooping of the Knights.
Not the same Black Knights. The Black Knights have struggled a little bit this year. I think ULM has a great chance. Following that game, I imagine they'll be deep in the fourth quarter. Army, ULM deep in the fourth quarter. We're going to see Marshall at James Madison, 2:30 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Originally, if you had looked at this game about 4 weeks ago, you might have thought this was going to be a game that determined the Sun Belt East. Now it looks more like a get-well game for James Madison. Shane, am I off on this?
To some degree. I mean, I think, JMU made a lot of mistakes last week. They could have won that game. They could still be sitting there here undefeated. They're obviously not. I don't feel like that after coming from practice here earlier tonight, I don't feel like they're feeling like they have to change a lot of drastic things. They need to, eliminate some of those mistakes, and they should be in good shape. Marshall has struggled, and I really kind of feel like Marshall's biggest weaknesses play right into JMU's hands. They struggled on the offensive line. They've been a little bit inconsistent in their passing game. Even though they're completing a high percentage of their passes, they're not getting the kind of yardage. And I feel like JMU is going to be able to move the ball pretty well against Marshall. I think this is a good opportunity for a bounce back game for JMU when you just kind of look at the matchup.
Yeah, Harry Columbi, he got hurt. Now he's kind of going back and forth with Cam Fancher. They have the 112th passing offense. I didn't really expect that from Marshall. Tibbs, what do you think of this 13-point spread for the Dukes? Too small?
Way too small. They're pissed. They're hungry. They're going to roll.
Yeah.
I'm afraid you're right. And I for whatever reason, I have a warm spot for Marshall. They beat Notre Dame, so I was expecting all this great stuff from the Thundering Herd, and they have looked just god-awful in the last few weeks. I know that Shane, that you're kind of being like paying respect to the opponent a little bit there, but I really do think JMU sort of throttles Marshall just out of pure anger, having been beaten by Georgia Southern.
Yeah, I think that.
Oh, go ahead, Shane.
Oh, are we out of time? I just say, I think I agree with you.
We got 2 seconds. You got this.
All right. No, I agree. It fits into that. I think JMU should come out and play much better than they did last week. And like I said, I just think Marshall's weaknesses really play into JMU's hands in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Georgia Southern, your old foe, Georgia Southern at Old Dominion, 2:30 p.m. ESPN Plus. We got to talking to Danny a little bit about this game. You know, I liked the Eagles a few weeks ago, and then they got beat by Georgia State. Then I disliked the Eagles, and they beat James Madison. So what are we going to see from this game, Shane? You've seen Georgia Southern firsthand. I think maybe you've seen Old Dominion too. What's going on?
It's hard to tell. Both of these teams are ones that I feel like are kind of getting it together. ODU, like similar to we talked about early in the season, why doesn't Georgia State start the season fast ever? ODU's kind of getting into that territory too. I mean, they played a tough non-conference schedule, but you know, they get into the conference, you know, first CUSA, now FunBelt, and they start looking like world beaters. They're actually in first place in the East. I mean, if you look at it right now, that to me is pretty surprising.
You know what was surprising was Old Dominion. I think they averaged 21 points a game headed into that Coastal Carolina game. Ended up playing a 40-pluser on them. That was pretty crazy. So Vegas says 2 points for the Monarchs against Georgia Southern. Ooh, is that Shane? Is that? I'm sorry, Shane. Thibodeau. Does Vegas have that right?
That's probably. It's probably a pick'em game. I mean, I sit there looking at it, going, Georgia Southern looked really good last week. Old Dominion looked pretty good for what they had last week, and I think that they just caught Coastal kind of napping and sleepwalking through the game. I don't think that you could really pick one team over the other. They're kind of one and the same. It's all going to be who has the ball last and who gets that one defensive stand. I do lean a little bit more towards Old Dominion, though, with the Alec Jennings and Wolf connection. But at the same time, Van Trees, I think he just picked up another 100 yards there throwing since we've been talking.
Tibbs, that was excellent analysis. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing this bend don't break defense from Old Dominion going up against Van Trees and his million yards per game type offense. It should be a good game. We're actually seeing a lot of good matchups this week. Here's another one. Although I'm not sure what it will result in the standings, but there is a lot of hate between the two teams. Arkansas State at Louisiana, 4 p.m. ESPN Plus. Arkansas State comes in having a hard time closing out games in the fourth quarter, and the Cajuns are having a hard time running the ball, which is completely unlike the Cajuns. Tibbs, provide some analysis, please.
Hoco for the Cajuns. So you got to think Dez is going to win his homecoming game. And I think Arkansas State's still trying to find themselves. And until they can show that they can play that fourth quarter, they're going to be in it. They're going to be close, and they're going to come up just short again.
Yeah, and you know, that win in Huntington against Marshall was big for the Cajuns. Even though Marshall's not playing well, they really needed to get that win. But what has been really surprising to me is a couple things. One is that Ben Woodridge, to me, has been playing a lot better than Chandler Fields. And I get the feeling that Woodridge, who I believe started getting more playing time against Marshall, I would be surprised if he ends up being the full-time guy. Chris Smith is also battling a hamstring injury, the starting running back for the Cajuns. That running, I think the Cajuns right now are the worst running team in the Sun Belt. From your perspective, Shane, it's 6.5 points for the Cajuns. Does that sound about right?
I think it does. Arkansas State, I don't know. Are they in trouble right now? You tell me. You're closer to this, Jeremy. I mean, this is the first week really since I started following the conference in depth that I've felt like, oh man, Butch Jones seems to be in trouble. People are turning on him a little bit. Like, am I reading that wrong?
There's sort of two camps. The one camp looks at Butch Jones and says, Butch Jones, your job is to rebuild this team through recruiting, which he is doing. And everybody's happy with that. But one of the aspects of rebuilding a team is also rebuilding a staff. And more people are unhappy with the offensive coordinator than they are unhappy with Butch Jones. Butch Jones is still safe right now, but he really does need to make some changes in the staff in order for his job security to remain secure.
Yeah, it just seems like the inability to close out these games
Yeah.
was acceptable at Memphis, and it was understandable against a good JMU team, and understandable on the road against ODU. That's a long trip, and it just seemed like maybe it came to a head where people were not really willing to put up with it anymore this past week.
No, in fact, I wrote a scathing article about it. I was super angry. And
I may be basing my opinion a lot on that article.
I think I called it a shit show, and it was. Yeah. And I think the staff does understand that. But like I said, the primary goal most people have with Jones is rebuilding this team. Now, yes, we'd like to see some wins come from that, and that would be great. And my time has expired, but I'm going to say this. I think it's going to be a good game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Arkansas State digs deep with it in themselves and finds the hatred to win this game, even if it is homecoming at the Cajun Dome. Cajun Field. Cajun Dome is where they play basketball. Last game of the set against two teams that are kind of feeling themselves a little bit. Southern Miss, who came away with their first Sun Belt win against Arkansas State, versus Texas State, who not only beat Appalachian State, but then took Troy to the wire, should have won that game. They play at 4 p.m., ESPN+. Southern Miss is a hot mess on offense. Texas State still trying to figure things out. I'm going to throw it over to you, Tibbs. What do you see coming out of this game?
We talked to the Don earlier, so you got to go with the Don and know that the Bobcats are going to get the win there as well. He said there's a mystery rider out on the Harley this week to lead the team out, and I think that's the difference to rally the troops and get a Bobcat win.
Yeah, Shane, the Vegas line is 2.5 points for the Eagles, which I find criminal. I really don't see the Golden Eagles winning this game just by looking at what happened at Hattiesburg. The offense is just a mess. If Frank Gore is stopped, you stop Southern Miss. Now, I know it's hard to stop Frank Gore, but still, there's not much there except for maybe their wide receiver, a guy named Brownlee, who's a very talented wide receiver. But they still can't settle on a quarterback. They still can't seem to get things going. Shane, this 2.5 point edge for the Golden Eagles seems way out of place. I want you to confirm it for me.
I would feel pretty good about that line if we were talking about a game in Hattiesburg. I feel like this is one the home team's going to win, like regardless of where it's played. So I'm leaning towards Texas State in this one. I'm expecting it to be fairly close. So the line being close doesn't necessarily surprise me. But with Texas State at home, I would, maybe flip that, make it a 2 or 3 point advantage for Texas State.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you see a team that beats Appalachian State in San Marcos. You have to believe that there is some sort of San Marcos magic out there that the Bobcats are going to take advantage. Tibbs, are you going to be at that game? It's within your vicinity.
I will not. I am hosting a watch party for the ULM Army game in H-Town with the Alumni Association.
Oh, that's going to be great. It's going to be a great game. And that concludes Second and Short. It was another touchdown, gentlemen. Bam! All right. We crossed the goal line. We are in opposing territory, and we're pulling away. Congratulations to you both. Thanks for participating in Second and Short. And now, I guess Tibbs, what do we call it? It's. I always forget the cadence here. It's parting shots, plugs, and promos.
Good enough.
Tibbs, you always make us go first. You go first on that.
As I said, hosting a watch party the second weekend with the Houston alumni chapter of ULM. Excited to meet some more alumni in the Houston area, and obviously cheer the Warhawks on to a win. Definitely watching the scoreboards as well, seeing how the rest of the West goes, and for sure watching Thursday night, the battle for the belt.
The battle for the belt is going to be badass. I can't wait to watch it. Shane, parting shot, promo, plug, let's hear it.
Parting shots is going to be how insane everything is about to get in the Sun Belt. We got, the championship runs and all sports, including football, volleyball, both soccers. And we just had basketball media day, like women today, men tomorrow. That's right around the corner. I don't know how we're going to survive November. November is going to be a lot of fun, but I don't know if anybody's going to sleep. I'm looking forward to it and also dreading it.
I tell you what, just looking at the standings for the Sun Belt, just in football, has been just incredibly entertaining. Because there's really, usually, like if you're in the MAC, usually it seems like things are decided after 3 weeks. You kind of know who's good and who's going to pull away. Or Mountain West can be the same way. Sun Belt is, to me, the most entertaining football conference you could possibly have. It's just a wonderful football conference to behold. I'm glad that it's in that shape. I'm glad you feel that way, Shane, because you're right. We're about to hit that crescendo of basketball starting, of soccer coming to a head, of women's basketball coming up. We are living in the golden time of college athletics, and it's going to be great. I can't stress that enough. My promo plug and parting shot. I just have a promo. Keep on reading howraiser.com. It's free content. It covers Arkansas State, but also covers the Sun Belt. We just published our predictions and analysis for this week's games. Go check it out. You can also see me at A-State Fan Rules on Twitter if you want to follow me. I'm a good follow. Wouldn't you agree, Shane? I mean, I provide some great information on Twitter. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. Yeah, definitely follow him. I do.
Go ahead. You can follow all three of us on PC Podcast or FunBelt PC on Twitter as well, where we have extra analysis and polls and fun things to do. So check us out. Do we have anything else? Tibbs, do we have any other things to say?
No, we're just ticking along, and I hope both teams have fun and go out and give 110%.
Absolutely. My name's Jeremy Harper from Hellraiser. He's Dusty Thibodeau from the Warhawk Report. And the other guy is Shane Metlin from Daily News Record.
Correct.
Yes, I
got it. You nailed it.
Edit that out, Dusty.